back in the day, leftists would constantly contrast their principled philosophical view of the world with capitalist greed, summed up in the expression, the Yankee dollar, working for the Yankee dollar, the holy dollar. Yes, that's what it all comes down to, doesn't it? Not like we principled leftists. Back in those days, you had sort of young people out in the streets protesting against basically everything, who came from generally pretty privileged backgrounds. They had the kind of image and the mystique of the great unwashed, raising their fist to the well-to-do capitalists and Tories out there, but they themselves came from backgrounds that where they knew that in the end, they would leave uni and get into good-paying jobs, house, mortgage, white picket fence, stocks and bonds, and all the rest. And it's really amusing today when you talk about mass immigration to Western countries, how frequently these people default to an argument that the ultimate justification for mass immigration is because it grows the economy. I'm thinking back to the days of the working for the Yankee dollar and all the rest of it. What happened to that? And it's just galling in the extreme to hear people like that today resorting to that kind of argument. And even more galling that in many cases it's exactly the same people, the kids of yesteryear who were out on the streets protesting are now running our society. So in many cases it's exactly the same people who used to be castigating the Yankee dollar and capitalism and capitalist greed, who are now saying, we must grow the economy through mass immigration. Back in the 1970s, in Australia and in other places in the Western world would have had the same thing, but in Australia, a political party emerged that was an interesting kind of hybrid of these different elements, because they were people with very liberal social and political views, should I say social views, and yet they were people who were very friendly to business, and these people were business people themselves, and it just shows the superficiality of all of the sloganeering that they used to carry on with, and how baseless was the image of hippies living in squats and rejecting the material culture that they were living in was just so empty and hypocritical. And there's nothing so crass as that enduring image of the sort of feral sort of protester type counterculture protester who knew that they were destined to go on to live the high life and were simply indulging infantile fantasies. These people moved on to running the Western world, and our culture in the Western world is infantile for that reason. And when both Donald Trump and in Australia Tony Abbott, Conservative Prime Minister, when they took power, both of them made the statement that this is a welcome to adult government once again. And with the growing fascination of young people with socialism in the Western world today, which is just unbelievable, these people must know nothing of history, know nothing of history of communism and the failure of socialism. It's just worth keeping that in mind when you look at what goes on in the world, what an infantile culture we live in. And of course, another aspect of this socio-economic sort of attitude to immigration back then was our slogan, very popular in Australia, populate or perish. Now, I'm thinking, what do you mean perish? What did they mean perish back then? Well, they meant being taken over by foreign powers. Australia was underpopulated. It needed to be populated. This echoes the economic argument that Australia needs to be growing its economy through immigration, and Australia needs to increase its population or perish. What do you mean perish? I mean, back then, the idea of perishing was being taken over by, well, frankly, Asiatic peoples from the north, who vastly outnumbered us. Now, that process has, in a de facto sense, actually been accomplished with a tremendous percentage of the Australian population consisting of cultures that are quite foreign to the Anglo culture of those times and the European culture of those times. So the perishing part of it is already well underway. So instead of populate or perish, it's now populate and perish. And what gets totally ignored and shunted to the side is a genuine and legitimate desire on the part of the European and Anglo part of our society to want to preserve its established way of life in the face of foreign invasion, almost. Because that's what a foreign invasion would have amounted to in the end, the replacement of our European heritage with just a hodgepodge of ethnic enclaves. And in the socio-economic arguments, you see just a straight-out preoccupation with materialism, which flies in the face of some kind of principled stance that, in its own sort of twisted way, the left had back then, and which it has sacrificed even that at the altar of what? Capitalist greed. That's all for now.